understanding active citizenship through Mandela's life, Mandela's legacy holds valuable lessons for everyone who desires to be an active citizen today. He demonstrated that meaningful change is possible when people take initiative and remain committed to justice no matter the cost. Mandela's journey into activism began with his refusal to accept systemic injustice. As a young lawyer and member of the African National Congress, he used his voice and skills to challenge oppressive laws. His courage to speak up, even when it meant imprisonment, reminds us that silence in the face of injustice benefits only the oppressor. After 27 years in prison, Mandela emerged without bitterness. He chose reconciliation over retaliation. As South Africa's first black president, he led the country through a peaceful transition, promoting unity through initiatives like Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Now, this approach teaches us that active citizenship requires a commitment to peace building, dialogue, and mutual respect. Our communities definitely will benefit when we prioritize healing and collective progress. And to join me to just, add more voice to this conversation tonight is Mide Alabi. He's a legal writer and policy analyst, and he's joined me via Zoom this evening. Thank you so much, Mide, for joining me this evening.
Thank you. So I'm really happy to be on your show.
All right, so this is such an interesting conversation, and it's actually apt, if you ask me, given that we just experienced a leader in Nigeria, his demise, and how social media went agog over so many things, right? Conversations that it sparked, and it just, begs the question, right? Was he truly a leader, for the people? And because again, normally when things like this happen and there's a demise, you see, you feel the mourning in the air, you feel the sadness, you feel all of those things. It's usually like that, but this was not the case, with our current president. But let's just stick to the conversation for today, Nelson Mandela, right? If you wanted to start off this conversation, how would you want to put the man called Mandela, in the faces of the people this evening?
Again, thank you very much, Esther, because I believe this is an incredibly important conversation. First of all, I have to say that Mandela, growing up, was a huge figure for me. In fact, I would say in a lot of ways it was larger than life. My first memory of seeing the man was around 2010 when the World Cup held in South Africa. It seemed so immense because previously I would never come to, our locale. Obviously, the years in prison had taken a lot of toll on him. And yet there was this calm strength, there was this inner sense of resolve that he still had. And I greatly admired him. I remember in 2013 when he passed away, that was one of the core memories I had with my grandfather, watching the burial ceremony and watching all the great festivities and, all the fanfare and everything. And it was obvious that he meant so much to the people of South Africa. And I think for everyone, for every leader, definitely, that's something to aspire to. Mandela was, as I said, he was larger than life. He was a true enigma. He fought for his people. And, it was an ideal for which, ending apartheid was an ideal for which was willing to die, which the man said himself, of course. So I think that selflessness, that courage of other people over your personal interest is monumental, and I think Nigerian leaders definitely have a lot to learn from that. We all have a lot to learn from that, really.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you because, again, there's one thing that I kept on saying to myself. I said, Uwa, if somebody imprisoned you, we had, when I was growing up, I saw some films, how, roaches, they would eat roaches in the cell and all of that. And imagine me going through all of that and still coming out without an iota of bitterness inside of me. I mean, that took a lot of strength. It took a lot of strength. And, because again, our leaders in Africa, you just say a small word, okay, look at the young girl that called the president that he's, what was the word she used? I can't remember now. He's, what was the word? Terrible, right? And all of a sudden
Oh,
it became, so, I mean, what else can somebody do to you? Because I don't think any African leader has the capacity, to handle what Mandela handled, right? And still come out with, love in his heart, with people in his heart, and forgiveness. I don't know how he did it, but, every time I am reminded that, what, I don't think you've seen anything for you to be able to hold any bitterness or whatever inside of you. So every time I just remember that, it just keeps, it keeps me grounded. It keeps me saying, no matter what happens, don't get upset, don't get
yeah,
offended,
definitely.
stay on the course, because he understood once bitterness and anger and all of those things set in, it will be difficult for you to be able to govern from a place of love. And I think he understood that principle so well, and that's why, he did not allow that, to come into the picture. But let's speak on, something that, Mandela really was known for, because he always used to say that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. He believed that, informed citizens are better equipped to make sound decisions and hold their leaders accountable. And, of course, by prioritizing education and personal development, he believed we could build a more engaging and responsible society, right? That is a complete opposite that we're experiencing today with African leaders, right? Because the level of education keeps going nosediving. We're not prioritizing education. I think a lot of African leaders, I've always said it and I'll keep saying it, what's it called? Poverty has been weaponized, illiteracy has been weaponized, and it doesn't seem like we're going to have any headway. How do we even start to preach the gospel of education and the importance of education to our current leaders, drawing these lessons from what Mandela represented? Oh, did we
Yeah,
lose?
I
Okay.
think that's a fantastic question, actually. Oh, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I thought we lost you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. Now I'm still here. So, yeah, as I was saying, I think that's a fantastic question. As someone who would definitely say that I've gotten a great education, someone who's schooled in this country and would say I've gotten a great education, I'm still an ardent believer, actually, in the Nigerian educational system. I think, like a lot of things within the country, it's flawed, and that's a sort of, that's a reflection of where we are today in the society. But then I definitely believe it's something that can be improved. About last month or so, or 2 months ago, I believe, I wrote an article which was published in the Premium Times as well about the whole JAM fiasco, with the results not being accurate and whatnot. And it served as a critique of the government, definitely. It served as a reminder that we could do better. But then I also praised the resolve of independent stakeholders, people like Alex, Onya, just people on the internet, because it could have easily have died and it could easily just
Oh, wow. Okay, so
fall
Mide, I
by the
think we're
road.
having trouble
But then,
connecting or listening to, because there seems to be a network issue. I would suggest you probably leave the call and come back using the audio. Let's see if it's going to be better, because it seems we're having trouble. I'm having trouble. I'm straining to hear you. But yes, I hear you. And just to even add to what he was talking about, the jam, when I saw that they had brought down the cutoff to about 150, it broke me, because again, he just broke me. So instead of focusing on improving the quality of the education, we're now bringing down the standards just to be able to accommodate. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's just sad, It's sad, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to get Mide back. When he's back, I'll come back to that jam conversation. So just to continue the conversation on Mandela, right? Because there was something that he also did. He, participating beyond ballot boxes. He believed that democracy does not begin and end with voting. Mandela's activism, it reminds us that real citizenship, right, involves constant engagement. It involves asking questions. It involves attending public meetings, supporting civic causes, and helping others understand their rights and responsibilities. I mean, that was very important, an integral part of who Mandela was. And it's very important that we all pay attention to that, Sorry. So some of us, we come to work even when we're not feeling too well, but yeah, we're good. All right, so I mean, active citizenship is something that we have preached, we've shouted, we've talked about every Monday in partnership with EiE. We talk about it all the time. And you look at what has happened over the weekend, the local government election, see how, there was just a very poor turnout. And the more we continue to do that, then it's going to be very difficult for us to make, any headway. If we truly want to draw a lesson from Mandela, we need to know that as a citizen, you cannot be on the fence. You cannot be docile. You have to participate. All right, so I'll move on to the final thought before I go on a break, right? I would say that, in Mandela's instance, his leadership was guided by values. And his values were integrity, humility, perseverance. He demonstrated that active citizenship is not about fame or recognition, but about doing the right thing, even when it is inconvenient or unpopular. Let's go on a short break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. All right, thanks for staying tuned. Now, if you just tuned in, we're discussing, of course, the lessons on active citizenship, taking lessons from Mandela and the legacy he left behind. Now, please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081 80384663. You can also call our phone lines. The numbers to call 07025007749 or 07014242420. Let's hear what you have to say. So, Mide, I hear you're back. Mide, are you back?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you clearly now. All right, so you were touching on education and you were trying to give the instance of JAM. I'd like you to finish up your train of thoughts there, then we can then move on.
Yeah, so first of all, my apologies about the network. The electricity actually went off.
Oh, wow.
You see, this is part of the active systems if you're talking about. We need to apply more pressure in that sector, probably. Concerning education, I was talking about JAM, the entire JAM fiasco that happened, and the need for us to collectively continue to hold the government accountable. I remember there was a lot of, furor about it. Some people wrote petitions. Some people contacted Dr. Tunji Alausa directly. That's our Minister for Education. So, when we do these things, and even if the government is sleeping, they have to wake up. When we use our collective power, use our collective might to make a statement. Education is the most powerful tool we can use to change the world. And for that to happen, us as citizens have to hold the government accountable. And
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And we must demand for better standards, and excellence, as opposed just settling for mediocrity. Because when JAM came out to say that they had benchmarked the, admission entry points to 150, I shook my head. This is taking us 10 steps backward, because again, you can't you can't drop the ball, you can't drop the standards just because, instead what is going on, instead of doing that, you should ask, why are we having mass failure, and try to solve that problem instead. All right, so let's move on. Let me take a few comments, then we'll move on. DAMT says, growing up, Mandela was a symbol of Africa. And Dave's Amin World says, it's really sad, the current state of living. Timilayin Ogundele says, till date, Mandela stands out as an African leader. And Isaac Adewuni says, excellent piece. I think he's referring to the piece that you wrote on Premium Times. Then Dave then comes back to say, if past leaders and current leaders after Mandela had even a little of the same ideals, maybe, just maybe, we won't be in this sad state. And I absolutely agree with you, Dave. And again, so just to move on the conversation, right? So I broke down this show for leaders and for citizens, right, as to what the lessons, that is important. And I like you, Mide, as I list them for you to just put in 2 words into that. So for leaders, I would say leadership with integrity and purpose, because that was one of the things Mandela stood for. He led with a deep sense of purpose, guided by values rather than personal gain. Leaders in developing nations, if you truly want to change your the narrative, you want to change status quo, you want to change your country, then you must learn to prioritize collective good over selfish interest. Mide, do you want to touch on that? Do you want to agree on that?
Yeah, I do agree with you, actually. I agree greatly. I think that for there to be any progress, it has to start from the top. And the leaders that we have currently, I wouldn't say that they're exactly pulling the weight. There's a good number of them that are trying, that are doing their best, I believe. I don't want to mention names, but there's certain local government chairmen definitely who I feel deserve some appreciation. But for the most part, I think we'll agree that there's a lot to be done. So the 2 things I would add, in addition to what you've said, is vision and willpower. In addition to having a clear idea of where you want the country to go as a leader, you also have to have the the strength, because whether we like it or not, to do things in the country is quite hard. We're over 200 million people. There's so many different tribes. There's so much bureaucracy. So from time to time, you could be met with the most stiff opposition when you're actually trying to make a difference. So I'll say that more than anything as well, willpower also counts. And we need we need people rather, who have collective willpower to do things things that are going to drive the country forward.
Yeah, I touched on forgiveness over revenge, but I just want to leave it there. Um, but forgiveness over revenge, I think our leaders should learn. You must show that you are more interested in national unity, and that must require some level of emotional maturity and vision, especially in post-conflict or ethical divided society. Ethically divided society. So look at what had happened at the toll gate, for instance, right? Instead of showing what's it called, force or whatever, it should have been some level of emotional maturity to show to the people that, no, we care about you, it was a mistake, and we want to move things forward, as opposed show of power and all of that. Then I'll also add that power is a means, is not an end. Mandela, if you studied his life, he willingly served only 1 term as president. He demonstrated that leadership is not about clinging to power, but about creating spaces for others to grow and serve. Mide, this one, I don't know. Do we even have any leader that has the capacity to do that? I think President Jonathan tried, because again, he would have as well also said no. It's not in my turn that you want to cut my tenure short. He willingly gave up this and said, no Nigerian life is blood. No Nigerian blood is worth any power. But just for you to add more to that, do our leaders actually see power as a means as opposed an end?
Okay.
Oh, sugar. Mide, are you still there? Okay, we're having trouble. All right, so let me move on
Oh, I
to.
just wanted to confirm that you could hear me,
Okay, I can
first of
hear
all.
you now. I can hear you now.
Oh, great, great. So pertaining to the Jonathan issue, I would agree that, yeah, his concession was definitely good for our democracy because, it always ends with very messy court petitions and sometimes lives are lost, like in the aftermath of the elections that we had in 2011. I don't think, for some of us who are younger, some lives were lost because some people were disgruntled that their candidate lost. So I think for him to do that was definitely great. But you know what they say, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's clinging to power is another thing we really need to African leaders really need to work on. We've seen the likes of Paul Biya in Cameroon, Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, and all those examples, although those are really extreme examples, we're yet to have something like that since 1999, which is good. But all the same, it all boils down to altruism. Mandela was altruistic in the sense that he knew what he wanted for the people, and he knew that he made a promise and he wouldn't want to start a precedent of getting into office breaking the promise because then it's a negative precedent which others could follow. So I think it was incredibly important that he did that one term and he allowed someone else to go because it means keeping your word. It promotes the trust that South Africans had in him, and it's definitely another thing leaders should emulate.
Totally, agree with you on that. Another thing I would say to our leaders, if you look at the life of Mandela, right, he brought together black and white South Africans, former enemies under the ideal of a rainbow nation. I mean, leaders should also focus on this inclusive leadership, right, across ethnic, religious, or political divides. This is one thing that has been, apart from weaponizing poverty, illiteracy, one of the things, again, is you see continuously come out when we want to exercise our civic duties, our rights, at polling units every election cycle. You would always see these issues around ethnicity, religion, and political divides. Mide, what do you think our leaders can truly do to learn from that? Because I feel if you are selfless, regardless of what political parties you belong or ethnic divides or whatever, your message should not be one that divides us. But this is what you constantly see, amongst our leaders. If you bring it home to Nigeria, so how do we start to intentionally, emulate this style of leadership that is ethnic blind, what's it called? Politically blind, religiously blind. How do we start to intentionally push for that?
Well, yes, thank you very much for that question because I think it's in a society as multicultural as Nigeria is, tribalism is always going to be an issue. The idea of ethnic superiority and the idea of I'm going to vote for my guy because he's from my tribe. I'm going to do this for this person just solely because they're from my tribe. That's a huge issue. Now, taking the example of Nelson Mandela, for example, because of course he's our case study for today. People don't realize that it was also his crew in the ANC who were fighting against apartheid. It was also quite multicultural, in the sense that Oliver Tambo and Thabo Mbeki, who fought alongside him, were from the same tribe as him. But Cyril Ramaphosa was Venda, Desmond Tutu was Swana, there's this other guy, Dennis Goldberg. He was white. He was a white British person. So, having them assembled together in pursuit of a collective goal, in pursuit of a shared goal, I think that's something we can also employ in Nigeria. I think when the goal is big enough, when we see something, in this case, a better Nigeria for tomorrow, when there's an ideal that Nigerians feel is worth pursuing, then the tribalism will no longer be an issue. That's my opinion. And I've seen it, the answers protest reinforced my belief in this
because we saw people literally cast aside, oh, I'm Yoruba, I'm Tiv, I'm Hausa, I'm Igbo, on the protest grounds. There was none of that. It was just, hey, we're Nigerian youths, we don't like police brutality, we don't like bad governance, and we want to put a stop to it, and this is the means we know how to. So I will just charge everyone out there listening to this. Look, which is more important to you, preserving your, tribal lineage, heritage thing, or actually pursuing a better future for tomorrow, for your children, for your nephews, for the people that are going to be there after us? I think that's a question that everyone definitely needs to ponder on.
To what you said about the NSAS protest. If you remember, if you recall, when it was time for the Muslim prayers, right, people gave way for them to say their prayers there, and the Christians, did the same, held their services there. I mean, it just clearly showed that, truly, if we have a common vision, those divides will actually just diminish. And I don't know. I wanted to chip in something around this coalition that is going on, whether we're going to see that happen. But
Oh,
let's
please,
let's
please, by
let's.
all means.
You said.
I said, please, by all means, do.
Because there's a coalition going on right now, and we're seeing that different people, it's like they're trying to put aside their personal interests, to come together, to, would I say, save Nigeria from the hands of, politicians that have just become very self-centered. Do you see that working? Do you see that coalition like the answer to these issues around the device that we have?
Well, I was making a joke last week about the coalition. I respect the number of people in the coalition. I respect that they actually put aside their respective interests to form the coalition. But then I don't want to comment on my deep views about the coalition in particular. But I will say this, right? It's not going to go anywhere if it's just the anti-Tinubu squad, which some people have already tagged it as. It can't just be the anti-Tinubu squad or the anti-APC squad. There has to be a level of, ideals, a level of rationalism that they have. What do you stand for? In the US, we know the Democrats stand for this, the Republican staff stand for this, Libertarian, Green Party, all those things. What does the ADC stand for? Is it just a collection of people who just happen to hate the same guy, or do you guys actually want to provide something tangible for us Nigerians? So that remains to be seen, and as long as that isn't answered, I'll understand all the skepticism that comes their way.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I share the same sentiments with you. Let's take more comments on from YouTube. Olabisi Solomon says, even if the government is sleeping, they have to wake up. Thank you, bro. And Ungo Umoye just says Mandela. Lori Albi says, we need to hold the government accountable. Moshood Adeleke says, Mandela is his enemies. When the time was right, right? How do you think we as a people, or as our leaders rather, how can they balance this sense of urgency with the wisdom and strategy? If you ask me, Tinubu has this in him. Our president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he's actually he has strategic patience, and that's why you see that everything that he's done, his strategy has been long term, and that long term has paid off because he has become president. That has been his goal. How do we get more
Yeah.
African leaders or more leaders within our Nigerian context to stop this urgency, this and start to intentionally apply wisdom and strategy? If you truly want to, make a better, make us, or create a better leadership structure in Nigeria.
Well, thank you for that question. I think that's a deep, profound question. How do we start applying? How do we have leaders that start applying strategy and actual tactical wisdom in governing the country? I would say this in reply to that. That we forget a lot of times that these leaders don't appear from thin air, right? They're also Nigerians like me and you. I mean, we've seen the likes of Adams Oshiomhole come from being a unionist and labor leader to becoming a governor, And we've seen, even the likes of Rocha Sokorocha as a philanthropist, and then they get elected as leaders. So one thing I would say in response to this is just it still boils down to active citizenship, really, in the sense of participating in electoral reform and voting. We need people there who are actually people who are people of substance, not people who are, oh my, I have a godfather somewhere. My father was the former governor. Now I'm running for governor, things like that. People who have actual substance. And Nigeria isn't devoid of these people. That's the funny thing. Nigeria is not devoid. We have so many great minds. We have people like Akimumi Adeshino, who did a fantastic job. I think he's agricultural development bank right now. We have people. We had the Wale showing cars. We have so many fantastic people. So we need to find a way to convince these people that please get into elective politics. Don't worry about the support. We're going to support you fully. We're going to throw our weight behind you. Just please find a way to run for something. And when we get these people in these places, then things are going to go great. Now, for the people that are there now, currently, pertaining to our current situation, I think the best we can do is still continue to push, continue to let our voices be heard, continue to petition your senator on whatever is going on, continue to raise awareness, educate people politically, and just push and just what we can do now because of the system and the way Nigeria is structured. We have to hope that they hear us and they actually effect these changes. Because if not, as Dele Farotimi, because I know my Egbon, as they say, my very, very senior colleague, Dele Farotimi, as he would say, the future will be grim if this isn't done.
Fantastic way to call to action, for our citizens. Very important that in the end, the power still lies with us as citizens, right? And if we're intentional about what we want to see, then certain things, we need to engage. And I like the fact that you've said it, call these people, talk to these people, engage with these people, and not just sit down or, and be a bystander. All right, so I'll just say that, for citizens, you must be intentional about understanding that civic responsibility matters. You must also understand that you have to embrace diversity and reject every form of tribalism, regionalism, or whatever religious intolerance that you have. All of those things must be shoved into a pit and just thrown away, and the key is lost forever, right? You must understand that education is very powerful, and intentionally, be part of educating yourself, even if the government is not ready to do that. Then you must also be patient in the fight for change. It's not rushed. When I hear people talking 2027 is not going to be the time where this change will happen. It might actually take another 10 years, another 15 years. It might take 2 years. I don't know. But we need to be very patient and very strategic. So if you had one final thing to say, Mide, what would that be so that we can wrap up this conversation?
Yes, thank you, Osa. I think this has been a remarkable conversation, and I really hope people are listening. I think the perfect way to end would be with a quote, one of my favorite quotes from Martin Niemöller. He was, he was a Nazi for some time before he eventually saw the light. And his quote goes thus: "First, they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did nothing because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did nothing still because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to stand for me." And I believe that this quote encompasses everything we've said here today, especially with the conversation about active citizenship. The road really isn't going to be easy because we've seen it numerous times. I mean, we've seen June 12, we've seen countless elections we've had since 1999, we've seen the aftermath of the NSAS protests, and just so many things. But hey, Mandela was in prison for 27 years. No one said it was going to be easy. And this goes especially to the young people out there. But the time is now. I strongly believe we shouldn't get discouraged. Even people in the diaspora who have jackpot in quotes, always keep an eye on the country. Always try your best to do your quota. And yeah, we need to collectively agree that enough is enough. We need to start actively not just thinking but doing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, a
Thank
better
you so
future
much. I
awaits.
mean, that's a fantastic way to wrap it. Thank you so much, Mide. I've had a fantastic time, just listening to you. All right, let me quickly take a few more comments. Isaac says, Louis says, Ward. Ajayi says, well said. Nelson Mandela, this was from Isaac. Nelson Mandela's legacy shines bright, a beacon of hope and a fair rule, while Nigeria's leader faltered time and time again, lost in corruption's dark pool. He then goes on to say that it feels like every year we have at least 3 major governmental setbacks, and it's rather appalling, yet still claiming to be the giant of Africa. DAMT says we need people and leaders with unity of purpose and sincerity to rewrite the history of Nigeria. Mandela was selfless, and we need a paradigm shift in Nigeria. A journey of 1,000 years begin with one step. Let's start now. Then Laurie Alabi says, I agree with Isaac. The recurring setback each year are starting to feel like a pattern, and is disheartening for a country that prides itself on being the giant of Africa. Ebi Pa says, impactful conversation. Ayo, well done. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for the comments. And please remember to share the links to as many people that needs to hear this. Now Mandela's life, Nelson Mandela's life, is a reminder that the fight for justice and equity is not reserved for a few. It is the duty of every citizen. As we prepare to mark Mandela Day, let us recommit to being active participants in our democracy. Change begins with each and every one of us. In our communities, our workplaces, our daily choices. True citizenship involves not only enjoying rights but also embracing responsibility. Now, in the spirit of Mandela, let us each do what we can with what we have to move our country forward. Let's not wait for the leaders. Let's be intentional about changing the game. All right, thank you so much to Mide, fantastic guest we had tonight. Again, thank you for all the comments on YouTube. Thank you guys. You made the show interesting and made it worth the while.